Hey, welcome, friends. Welcome to this new episode, postcat number 4. As you may notice in my previous videos, I always talk about mindset. In order to succeed in your life, whether it's personal life or business life, you're gonna need to change your mindset. You're gonna also need to change your bad attitude and get rid of bad habits. And among those bad habits is being alcoholic or smoking weed or being addicted to drugs or any bad thing that you can do, because it's not gonna allow you to go for work. You're gonna lose your time, you're gonna lose your money, and probably you're gonna lose your brain. And while talking about brain, our guest today is a neuroscience coach and consultant, and he already went from being alcoholic. If I remember well, he told me that he was used to drink 1 or 2 bottles of vodka per day. That's too much. And also, he's the he's a former, or he owned many small to medium businesses. So we gathered two person in one person, former alcoholic and a former entrepreneur. Welcome, George Haymaker. Welcome to this episode, and thank you for accepting it.
Hi, Marwan. Nice to meet you and see you. And hello, everyone. Nice to be here. Yeah, two people and one people. That's one person. That's a good way to describe it, I guess.
Yeah, that's great. That's great. So people, before going to the sexiest part, now let me introduce who is George Haymaker. Could you give us a little bit information about yourself? How did you uh, overcome from being alcoholic? What did you do for your businesses, etc.?
Yeah, happy to. Yeah, I'm 64 years old, so the story started a long time ago, actually, in childhood. Yeah, I have a lot of addiction in my family. My mom's side of the family were struggling with addiction. And so people that have genetic predispositions to addiction have genetic coding in them that makes them predisposed to falling prey to addiction if certain things happen. If the genes express themselves and if they choose to use drugs and alcohol, they have a much higher likelihood of becoming an addict if they choose to go down that road. So that's number one, is my genetic predisposition. And secondly, I had an upbringing that was privileged in many ways financially, but there was also some circumstances growing up that made me uncomfortable in my own skin, and a lot of moving around, having to fend for myself, a lot of physical discipline from my family. So I was just struggling with, with who I was and was I good enough, in and out of a lot of environments, having to meet new friends, say goodbye to old friends. I went away to boarding school early on in my life. My parents moved overseas. So anyway, I was uncomfortable in my skin. I had a lot of anxiety, a lot of anger, a lot of defensiveness. And the combination of those two things, when I got to college, I tried drugs and alcohol because that's what you do in college. And I found that all my anxiety went away. And so that became my way of coping with my uncomfortable mental experiences, was to use drugs and alcohol to ease the anxiety. And that's how I coped for the next 30 years in my work life. I was an entrepreneur. I started and built several companies, which is a high stress environment as well, as we all know. And the combination of those things, the high stress, the mental anxiety, and the history of addiction in my family, really came together to set up a perfect storm, where my addiction began to progress, and it got to the point where in my early 50s, I was using a lot of pain pills and drinking a lot of liquor every day just to feel normal, just to keep the withdrawals from setting in. And it got really bad, and I had to go to rehab. And that's the point where my life turned around, where I had to take a hard look in the mirror and decide that things hadn't gone well for me. I was living a life that lacked any meaning or purpose. I didn't know who I was, what I was living for. And so yeah, I was sitting there in rehab wondering how I had gotten that way and what I was going to do next. I just didn't know how to go on, what change was going to look like, how to go about it. And so it started, I've been in recovery now 12 years, and over the course of that period, I've learned a lot, done a lot of research, a lot of reading, been a part of 12-step programs. And what it all comes down to is that these patterns that we have in our lives that maybe aren't helpful to us, including addiction, they form these patterns in the brain. There are neurological patterns that represent these neural pathways or sequences of neurons that combine together in these pathways, and they form these patterns that represent how we've been thinking and feeling and acting in our lives. And it kind of like forms this map in our brains that looks like a Rand McNally map, of all the roads and highways and stuff that we would see on a map, and everybody's brain looks differently. And the good thing about the brain is that it can change. It can change its mapping. And so that's what I was able to find out through all my research and working with myself and eventually with others, is that the brain is very forgiving. Sure, it's developed these patterns based on how we've acted and felt and thought up until that point. But if we start doing things differently, the brain can remap itself in any way that we choose to map it, in any direction. And so that's really kind of the miracle of the story, is that, everyone has the same capacity and capability in their brain, is to take control of it and really guide it and direct it in any direction they want to take it.
Okay, that's great. So if I understand well, our brain is like hardware of a PC or laptop. So yeah, interesting story. Now, because about all my followers are either an established entrepreneurs or people who are on the way to make their financial freedom. But I don't have the exact stats, but we know that poor people are the most who are alcoholic. We know that. I don't have the exact stat. So my question is, you said that you had some businesses in the past, small to medium businesses, and you was also alcoholic. Was that you were alcoholic and you had those businesses, or you stopped from being alcoholic and then there was the switch for becoming an entrepreneur? So I think this is the question, or this is the answer that people want to know for now from you.
Yeah, they were combined together. So at the age of 30, I'd been working for a larger company, and I decided that I wanted to work for myself. I felt it within me that I wanted to create my own destiny, that I wanted to call my own shots. I didn't like working for other people. I wanted to do my own thing. It was just a really a psychological need that I had deep within me that I wanted to exercise and be my own boss. That started at 30, and all the while I was using drugs and alcohol. Now, addiction, if you understand it, takes different forms. It isn't always, it doesn't start out bad. It starts out where you can function with it. And in my case, I wasn't using like during the week. I would binge maybe on the weekends. And it took, over the years, it took different forms, but it began to progress and get worse and worse the longer that I continued to use drugs and alcohol. So from the age of 30 to 50, I was creating and running these businesses quite successfully. But while I was using drugs and alcohol to deal with the stress, to deal with the other underlying mental discomforts I had around my upbringing and what that had caused in my brain, the patterns. And so I think you'll find that not that unusual that people can use drugs and alcohol to cope while they're high performing also.
Yeah, great. That's great. So for now, I have your website in front of me here. It's georgehaymaker.com. It's going to appear in the bottom of the video. Or for anyone who want to check it, you can click the link in the video description. Yeah, so interesting. So for now, let's say, for example, I have a brain trouble or alcoholic or something. Because I saw on your website that you are a neuroscientist, coach, and consultant. So let's say, for example, I have these issues, I have this problem, and I want to fix my brain and my life. So when I first get in touch with you, what's the first process you're gonna do with me, for example?
Yeah. So, depending on the client's, generally I like to work with somebody for about 90 days. And the reason 90 days is because it takes that long for the brain to begin to shift significantly in a transformative way to where by the end of that period, you are thinking and feeling and acting in a significantly different way than when you started. And the reason for that is because the brain relies on repetition, doing things over and over and over again in order to change. It also requires an individual to understand how the brain works and functions so that they have an understanding of what it is that we're trying to do with the brain. So in working with someone, there's a lot of information that I share, a lot of education with neuroscience, understanding again how the brain works. We talk about the habit or the patterns that the person has developed. We really dive deep into those to deconstruct them in a way that we really understand how they got to be there in the first place. And then we talk about why those patterns may not be true today. They may have been true a long time ago when they started to develop, but they're probably not true today, and they're not serving us well. They're hurting us. They're not helping us anymore. And then we talk about how we want to reframe those patterns into something different, how we want to rebuild whatever's coming up for us. How do we want to think and feel and act differently? And then we begin to diagram and visualize those new ways of being, and so that we can start to practice those ways of being and develop new neural patterns out of them. And so this entire process of understanding where we are, having awareness around it, understanding how to change, and then actually starting to change takes time. And so typically I'm meeting with someone once a week at minimum for 90 minutes. There's education that's going on in between. People can reach out to me in between. And it's just this gradual process of, shifting someone over this period of time until they begin to be able to self-diagnose and self-manage themselves.
Okay, that's great. That's great. So I talked about some people before, and what they told me is some people they are on the road to make their financial freedom, and they read a lot of books about successful people, and some of the books they said that some of the successful entrepreneurs said that they sleep 2 to 3 hours per day because they were working pretty hard. But someone told me that I have those sleepless nights where I work hard, etc. But now I feel like I lost control because I don't have much sleep. In your experience, since you are a neuroscience coach and consultant, what's your point about that? About those people who don't sleep much or sleep just 2 to 3 hours? What's the impact on the brain in this situation?
Yeah, it's significant. And that's part of what I help individuals do is understand how to optimize their mental resources and how to spend them efficiently during the day. Because really, our brain is our partner to accomplish everything we want to accomplish. And if we don't understand how the brain works and what it needs, and we are causing it harm or not giving it all the resources that it needs to function well, then we're only just hurting ourselves. So while we may think that working harder, sleeping less is maybe intuitively it makes sense to us, in the long run, that's actually not accurate, because we're not giving the brain as many resources. We're not filling up the tank of mental resources every day as we should. So we're dealing with less than a full deck of cards to begin with. And the actual productivity that the brain experiences during the day is not nearly as good as it otherwise would have been. So you can do, if you eat well and sleep well and exercise, and do other things like mindfulness practices to really put your brain in the best possible position to succeed, you can get more done in less time than you can if you're burning it at both ends. And that's just not me talking or guessing. That's actually the science. And so there's a lot of things that happen, for example, when we sleep that are important, systematic things that need to happen. A lot of resetting that goes on in our brain so that we're ready for the next day. And if we're not allowing our systems to do that, then we're already starting to operate at a deficiency, at a deficit starting the next day. So it's just not sustainable. It may seem like, we're trying to beat the competition and do other things by working harder, sleeping less, but it's actually scientifically proven that it doesn't work.
Yeah, awesome, awesome. That's great. So, I think now people they want to hear some part of your story. So, you were a former entrepreneur, and most people they want to become entrepreneurs. So, and as a former alcoholic, so how did you manage to do your business? Now we talked about the benefit of sleeping in the night and working in the day, because now people they follow or they get inspiration from successful people. They wanna do just like them. Okay, they wanna they wanna eat like them. They wanna work like them. They just wanna copy their lifestyle. So in your experience, how did you manage to do those businesses with all the knowledge you got in neuroscience? So how did you do that?
Well, bear in mind that, my experience with neuroscience is in the last decade. So it's really a result of, having to hit bottom and then learning what to do differently as a result. So when I was operating these businesses, by and large, from the age of 30 to 50, I was not treating my brain properly. I didn't understand my brain. I didn't understand how it worked. I just assumed it was there to serve me and it would do whatever I asked it to do, no matter whether I gave it the resources it needed or not. And so I was really burning it at both ends. And, I experienced a lot of detriment as a result of it. I got through it, but I was very stressed out a lot. My nervous system was highly reactive. I was always on edge. I didn't, my patience with people wasn't what it needed to be. I was highly demanding. I would be quick to react emotionally. And the drugs and alcohol certainly didn't help that. It only made it worse. And so I wish that I had approached things then as I do now. If the experience would have been better. And so I just would really encourage people to look at their brains differently, to think of it differently, to actually, take the steps necessary to understand how the brain works and how you can have a relationship with it instead of just demanding that it perform for you. Really take the time to understand what it needs to perform well and the different things it needs during the day while you're spending your mental resources doing your work. There's a lot of things you can do to make that resource spend a lot more efficient. I'll just give you one example.
Okay.
So our brains are made to think in like 90 minute spans of time. And so we can focus intently with great attention and focus for 90 minutes and think and do projects, okay? But as soon as we hit about 90 minutes, our brains begin, the laws of diminishing returns start to set in, where our efficiency is growing and growing and growing during that 90-minute period. Then it hits 90 minutes and the efficiency begins to decline. And so what we need to do is in order to reset that and have it start to be efficient again, we have to take a 3 to 5 minute break and turn off the mind and either meditate, breathe, walk outside, get some sunshine, do some push-ups, anything that does not involve, anything that allows us to shut off the front part of our brain, which is where all the thinking occurs, the prefrontal cortex. If you can shut it down for 5 minutes, you will reset your neurotransmitters. You will let your cortisol, which builds up, it's like a stress hormone. As we work harder and harder, it begins to build up and starts to malfunction our front part of our brain. It'll start to drain out of your system. So in other words, if you had a thoughtful approach to your brain and your mental resources, you would work for 90-minute spans, take a 3 to 5 minute break, and then go at it again. That's just one example. Another example is when we multitask, when we're doing like 3 and 4 things at once. Maybe we're working on a project. An email comes in, we bounce over there. We go and a Slack comes in, we go over there. Well, that is very expensive in terms of how we're burning our resources, as opposed to sticking with one task through completion and then moving over to something else. And so if we understand these things about the brain, all entrepreneurs want to be efficient in terms of how they utilize things, right? They're very efficient about how they're building processes in their business. Why wouldn't we be as efficient in how we manage our brains? So you can't do any of this unless you understand how the brain works and what it needs, right? And so that's what I help entrepreneurs do, is understand exactly how their brain works and how to maximize its performance and optimize these mental resources in terms of filling the brain with as many as we can and then efficiently spending them during the day.
Yeah, that's great. That's great. And that's very great advice, because me too. Now I'm opening my laptop. I have just 3 windows open here. I saw some friends of mine, they open more than 100 tabs there, and I told them this not gonna be efficient for you, because whenever you jump from here and there, this is not good for the efficiency. So next question to you. Last year, when I checked my analytics on YouTube, only 5% of my followers were female. And my YouTube channel, I talked about entrepreneurship, mindset, ways to make money online, e-commerce, all stuff about e-commerce, etc. The female viewers or the female followers were just about 5%. Now, in this year, recently, they jumped to 25%. So 25% female, 75% male. I don't know why, but I think that now more and more people, or more and more female, or more and more ladies want to make money online. They want to work online. And while talking about that, I had a discussion with the youngest client I had till now. He has 15 years old. He told me, I want to be an entrepreneur, but I don't think I'm not intelligent enough at 15 years old, because I want to have my own business. And since I'm not a specialist about that, I told him, when there is a will, there is a way. But in your opinion, since you're doing neuroscience, etc., is there any specific age where people could be in top of their maturity to start an online business?
Well, so the brain is not fully developed when we're born, okay? There's a lot of development that occurs as we age, particularly the front part of the brain, which is the prefrontal cortex, which is that brain, the part of the brain that's responsible for thinking, decision-making, evaluation, impulse control, a lot of the analytical processes that we go through. And so, if you're starting a business before the age of, so that part of the brain continues to develop until our mid-20s. So, just from a neuroscience standpoint, your brain is still developing its faculties until its mid-20s. And so you're going to know more. You're going to have a more fully developed brain in your mid-20s than you are earlier on. But even maybe more valuable than that is all the experience you're going to have as as you get older and have different experiences. So far be it for me to, tell anyone what to do or not to do. I can just share the benefit of what neuroscience says in terms of your brain development. You're going to have more capability, brain-wise, as you get older, up until your mid-20s, and then you'll have the benefit of experience, which is all, experience tells us many things. So from an entrepreneur, I can tell you that, you learn a lot just by doing and being a part of and experiencing. But hey, if somebody has a great idea and they have demand and they have something that people want to buy, then why not?
Great. That's great. So yeah, I'm checking your website here. That's awesome. So could you tell me when you get, I don't know how to call them, patients or customers, when
Client.
someone try clients, okay, when someone try to reach to you, do you do that online? Do you do kind of coaching and consulting online, or do you do it one-on-one like that physically, or how do you do with those people? How do you work as a neuroscience coach?
Yeah, I mean, largely it's online now, just because wherever people live, if they happen to live near where I live in the San Francisco Bay Area, it's always adds another productive element to get together in person, because a big part of coaching is the relationship that you establish with somebody. There's a lot of trust and rapport that's established where, the client is going to share things with you that they may not share with just everyone. And it's really important to be as open and honest, and because that's where the value is and that's where the information is really getting to the heart of what a person is going through and the troubles they may be experiencing. So, but that's my job, is to create an environment that, makes the person feel safe and trust in a trusting environment, confidential environment where they can open up and, and share whatever is on their mind. So it works just fine, whether it's in person or online. I think what also helps people when they work with me is that they know I've been through a lot of shit, and, I've struggled myself, and everyone goes through struggle, right? No matter how well things go in your life, you're still going to have setbacks. And that's a big part of being an entrepreneur, is you're going to have setbacks, and it's what you do then that really matters. It's how you respond. It's your resilience. And so I've been through all that. I've had the ups and the downs, personally and work-wise. And I think people relate to that, or they want to know that they're working with someone that maybe has been there, that can relate to them and really knows what it's like to live their life.
Yeah, that's great. That's great. That's awesome. So, next question to you, as a former alcoholic, because when we see someone being addicted to alcohol, drugs, or anything else, the first advice that we give them, oh, stop drinking. You're alcoholic, stop drinking. It's easy to say than to do. And you know better than me in that. So, if someone, for example, is alcoholic, they have been in trouble financially, emotionally, and etc. And they went to you for a consultation. What's the timestamp or the time needed for him to be cured at 100%?
Okay, well, the first thing we need to make clear is that no one is ever cured. Once you're an addict, or, people may have trouble using that word, but once you're an alcoholic or you have addiction to anything, you are always addicted. The question is, are you in active addiction? Are you in the disease, or are you recovering from it? Meaning you're doing things that that represent a different way of life for you, that have more meaning and reward than the old way of life, but you're still always one step away from being an addict or an alcoholic. Okay, so that's the first thing. because there's nothing as such as getting cured. You end up living with it and you change your life completely, but you're still have the disease within you. Okay. And so there's some time elements related to addiction that you need to go through that allow for healing and some resetting of the brain networks that have been damaged during addiction. And so the first milestone is like 30 days. The substances begin to leave your system and you start to feel better. And you're working on figuring out how to live life differently away from the drugs and alcohol, because the addiction is so powerful and so strong, and it affects the brain in such dramatic ways that it's very hard to get away from once it gets a hold of you. But it really does involve resetting of the reward network in the brain. And only time away from the drugs and alcohol will help that. As you heal, the system will reset itself. And then we work on a new lifestyle that has different types of rewards that are more based on natural life pleasures. So we're not relying on drugs and alcohol to give us reward anymore. We're going back to things that the person enjoyed in their life maybe before they got into drugs and alcohol, and building upon those and creating new reward for the brain out of those things. And so the next milestone is after 30 days, we look to 90 days to begin to have some of these new patterns that we're working on begin to take hold in the brain. And 90 days is a real critical point where, some of these patterns are now starting to develop in the brain, these new neural pathways that are no longer tied to addiction. And so the mind is beginning to shift away from addiction into new things that are beginning to give it reward and make it worth living for. And then after 90 days, it's 6 months, and then a year. Really, the first year is really important in addiction. Once you're at a year, you've established enough practice and repetition, living life in a new and different way, that you get far enough away from how you were living life before that your brain begins to really move on. So there's some real distinct milestones during the addiction process. And if I'm going to work with somebody, it has to be at least 90 days, if not longer, because the tendency to maybe fall back into the old patterns can be there, and you just have to really stay structured and true to a new process, a new way of living, in order for it to begin to take hold. And people need help generally through this period and process.
That's great. That's great. Awesome. I'm gonna tell you, I'm gonna tell you a funny story about me. A few years ago, I'm not alcoholic, but I used to go to bars or to dancing club from time to time, one time a week or two times a week. But I'm not alcoholic. I used to drink two couple beers here and there. But I'm gonna tell you a funny story there. Whenever I used to go to a bar, I get a new order from a client. I told myself, is this a coincidence? Whenever I go to a bar, I get a new order. And when I had no money, I thought to myself, oh, okay, I'm gonna need to go to a bar, drink a beer because I'm gonna get a new order. And I bet with my friend, I told him, we're gonna go to the bar, I'm gonna pay you for your beer, and I bet you I'm gonna get a new order from a client. And it happened. And it happened. But
Wow.
I stopped drinking. Yeah, I stopped drinking. So, my question to you, I remember you told me you were used to drink one or two bottles of vodka per day. That's that's too much. That's too much. I remember I just drank one shoulder of vodka and I was completely drank. Just one shot. So, how did you do to stop that? Because stopping is the most difficult part, I think, of being alcoholic. Because drinking one or two bottles a day is too much. So now people who are alcoholic want to hear this answer from you. How did you do? What's the pattern did you use to stop for one shot?
Well, in my stage, I let it go way too long. And I was at a point where I was having to drink and use pills every 15 minutes in order to keep the withdrawal symptoms from getting too severe. And so I needed help. So I had to go to rehab to separate myself physically from the drugs and alcohol. So I just couldn't get any more, right? I had to go to a place where I had no access to it. And I was there for 60 days while I was, moving away from the drugs and the alcohol. And they give you medication for the first week that helps make it more comfortable, but it's still miserable. And you don't really start to feel better until, several weeks in. You begin to start to feel a little better, but you're just still very drained, weak, low energy. And it just takes time for the body to begin to heal and reset itself. As far as, that's the physical part of it, but learning how to live life differently, where drugs and alcohol are no longer part of your life, and you have to deal with life on its own terms. And all the things that used to make me drink and want to use drugs to cope, I was now having to figure out how to deal with them without the drugs and the alcohol. So there's really two steps. One is to get away from the drugs and the alcohol and let your brain and body heal and reset itself. And then the next part is to figure out, how do I deal with these things that were making me want to drink and use in the first place? And how do I enjoy life without drugs and alcohol when it's been a part of my life for 30 years? And that's really the biggest thing that people confront, is what happens next? Like, how do I never drink again? And, ultimately you get to a point where it's like you get so many more things out of life by not drinking and using drugs than you used to get out of drinking and drugs when you use them. I mean, I get to feel good every day. I get peace and serenity. I get to not have to chase more drugs and alcohol all the time. I mean, it got to be where that was the main thing in my life, was figuring out where I was going to get more drugs and alcohol. I don't have to worry about that anymore. I get to feel good about myself. I get to be proud of myself. I get to work. My brain works better now. It's smarter. I get so many more things out of living life the right way, or, without drugs and alcohol, sorry, than I did before. I just didn't know how. I didn't know, my brain wasn't used to getting rewards out of those things because I had never trained it to do so. But now I know that I know how the brain works, so I know how to train it to do anything I want it to do. And that was such a wonderful insight to me, is that, the brain is there to change and develop and adapt and evolve. We just have to know how to work with it in order to have it move in the direction we want it to move. And I just had no idea that that was even possible. And so that's really what recovery is it's getting sober, but then it's also figuring out how to live life differently, in a way that's going to give you much more meaning and purpose, and pride in yourself. It's establishing a whole new identity about who you are as a person. And so that takes time, and that's where someone like me can help people, guide them through that process, so they're not trying to figure out how to do it themselves.
Yeah, interesting. I know that there are a lot of people watching us now, and they wanna learn a lot from you, because they're gonna need hours or probably days to recover, and so you can learn everything about them. And so, okay, so for now, just to summarize, what's the advice can you give to the people watching us now, as a neuroscience coach and consultant? What's the best advice you can give to these people?
Well, I mean, we've talked a lot about addiction, but, understanding your brain and understanding how to make it work better for you isn't just about addiction. It's about everyone. The brain, is capable of so much, but if we don't understand how it works and how to access that capability, we don't even know how to begin to go about realizing that potential. And so that's really what, either I help do, or even just researching yourself, about the brain, about neuroscience, how it works. You really just need to understand, can you get more out of your life by understanding how your brain works and functions, and how to go about getting it to do the things you want it to do? Are you being negatively affected by racing thoughts, or by procrastination, or by stress, or by emotional reactivity, or by getting angry, or by anything that's getting in your way to achieving what you want to achieve? Are you finding that you're getting tired quickly during the day? You're not eating right, sleeping right, exercising right. You don't know how to go about those things to benefit your brain most of all. You've heard about meditation, but you don't know how to do it, and you don't know what you're doing it for. I help with all of this stuff because it all has an effect on the brain. And what we're looking for here is a complete understanding of how the brain works, and how to work with it day in and day out to put it in its best possible position to maximize its own resources and deliver to you the type of performance you want, so you can get the most out of your life.
Yeah, that's great. Because on all my videos, I talked about the mindset, changing the habits, don't procrastinate. Because I used to do this mistake when I was young. I used to procrastinate. I used to postpone something. Oh, I feel tired today. It's raining. It's hot. It's freezing cold. I always did that. But now I always try to work in my discomfort zone to make things happen. So yeah, I think
So,
we had a lot of value. Yeah.
so just that point you're making, you call it a discomfort zone, but so that is a very good example of a situation where you get discomfort, and some people would interpret that in such a way that they would then stop doing what they're doing and procrastinate, or basically do nothing because they're just uncomfortable. But you have changed that thinking to where discomfort means a good thing, and it's an opportunity for growth and development. And so you've trained your brain to look at a discomfort zone differently, and you've practiced that over and over again until you've gotten really good at reframing what discomfort means to you. So instead of meaning it's time to quit and do nothing, it means it's time to double down and do more. And so that is a great example of training the brain right there.
Yeah, yeah. And one of the best example is doing this kind of podcast and talking to people in English. As you noticed, I had an accent because English is not my first language, and it's not my second language. It's my third language.
Wow.
My native language is Arabic. The second one is French. The third one is English. But why I'm going out of my comfort zone? Because I gonna need to do this for business. Because few years ago, I had an agency, e-commerce agency, but I started to losing clients, etc. And almost all my competitors were doing kind of online coaching, talking to people in kind of videos, but I was not comfortable with that. I was shy. I was kind of, no, that's not for me. I'm not gonna turn on the camera. That was not for me. But I had to go from my comfort zone and be in my discomfort zone to look for growth and to look for money. Yeah.
Can
Um,
I make a
yeah.
comment about that?
Sorry?
May I make a comment about that?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. So that's another great example. And what that means, when you're uncomfortable, your brain is uncomfortable. So that means it doesn't know that what you're asking it to do, which is something like podcasting for you. You've never done it before. Your brain's uncomfortable doing it because it's never done it before, and it doesn't feel safe to your brain. And your brain's major responsibility, its job, is to make sure that you're safe and you survive, and that it manages your resources to making sure that you're safe and survive. But when you're asking it to do something completely different, it's resistant to that, which is what the discomfort is, because it doesn't know that what you're asking it to do is going to be safe for you or that you're going to survive. It detects it as a threat. Okay. And so that's where the discomfort is. But what you did is you fought through it and you began to train the brain and you started to podcast and your brain began to realize it wasn't as bad as it thought it was going to be. And you started to have fun with it and you started to feel good about it and build a reward about it. And your brain said, wow, this is not only safe. I'm not going to, we're not going to get harmed by this, but it also feels good. And so then your brain started to want to do it more. And then before you know it, by doing it over and over again, you get 90 days down the road and you've retrained your brain. Okay, that's exactly an example of what we're talking about in terms of shifting patterns in your brain. It's telling you one thing, but if you decide that you want to do it anyway, and your brain is going to come along with you, and you know how to bring your brain along with you because you understand the science of it, then before you know it, you can change your entire life. Great example.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Because I remember years ago when I started doing I didn't start a YouTube channel. I started to talk with the prospect and clients on video calls. I was not comfortable. I said to myself, oh, I don't look good. I don't speak very well. The camera is bad. The sound is bad. I was not comfortable. But now it's easy for me and it's like kind of a must for growth. Yeah. So
Good for you.
I think we talked about a lot of things. We had a great episode with you. So now for anyone who wanna get your services to have a consultation with you, because I think you have a lot to say and a lot to do to help people, where they can find you, because I'm gonna put your website, georgehaymaker.com, is gonna be in the video description. Is there anywhere else they can find you to get a consultation with you?
Yeah, go to the website, georgehaymaker.com, and there's a link on there to schedule a free discovery call. And this is, no pressure, no pitching. If you want to find out how neuroscience can help you in your life, the difference it can make, you just want to learn a little bit more, I'm happy to spend the 30 minutes with you and just have a conversation. So that's the best way to get a hold of me.
I was very happy to. Thank you so much, guys, for watching. The link is in the video description. If you have any question, you can put it in the comments or go directly to George's website and talk to him directly. Thank you so much, George. Have a nice day.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
All right.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.